What is going on, everyone, and welcome to Rec Talk. And we've nearly come to the end of the football season. Tomorrow will be the national title game. But we just had some news break on the ACC front. And you know I'm an ACC man. But before I get into that, true story is something that happened to me today. I have a storage unit. I actually live outside the perimeter, and then my storage unit is inside the perimeter. So I went to my storage unit. No one's in there. Put some Christmas stuff up. And as I'm getting in my truck, or I'm in my truck, I see something out of my peripheral vision. And it's a lady who I've never met before. I've never seen before. And she just aggressively shoots me the middle finger and basically like presses it up against my truck window and then walked off. That's kind of what I feel like college football does to me on a somewhat regular basis, except of a horribly mistaken and or mentally deranged person. It's the middle finger of stupidity and or selfishness, often both. So if you haven't heard this, ACC's thinking about redoing entirely how they do the ACC Championship game. Now, if you remember, all teams that got a first-round bye this year, who were conference champions, right? That was the agreement, lost. Every team that got a first-round bye lost. And so I guess, look, in today's college football, it's wah, cry, I didn't get what I wanted immediately. You know, I know we've only done this for 1 year, but it's got to change. So this is what the ACC's thinking about doing now. One is stupider than the other, but they are incredibly stupid. First option is basically not have an ACC title, have the ACC NIT Invitational for 2 and 3, and whoever is first place in the conference, they get a bye, not in the playoffs because that's not determined by the ACC, but they get a bye from playing in the conference champion. And literally, in the words of Jim Phillips, who's the ACC conference commissioner, he said, we'll basically have a playoff champion and a regular season champion. Even though you might get both of those might make the playoffs. So basically, you're just not going to have an ACC champion. I mean, think of this. Think of the ACC, and look, if I take off my Homer glasses, the ACC's not been great, right? That's probably an understatement. Let's look at who would have been 2 and 3. SMU, Miami. Maybe just think about on a normal year. You might have an 8 and 4 team that ends up beating number 2. Very reasonable to think a 7 and 4 or a 7 and 5 or an 8 and 4 team could be in that 3 spot and could win the championship game. They're not going to the playoffs, but they would be your quote unquote ACC champion because they would have won the ACC championship game. This is incredibly stupid. I think that a lot of these teams look at that, like they don't identify what the problem is. Like, did Clemson lose to Texas because they had to play in an ACC title game? No. That's my opinion. There's no way you could know that. Clemson, I think, was clearly not as good as Texas, though. And if they played 5 times, I think Clemson might win 1 or 2 of them. By the way, they both played in a conference title game. So what's the excuse? Here's the other stupider solution they have. Let's have another game that's basically a play-in game to the ACC Championship game. So you'll have, remember how we had the 1 through 4 seeded college football playoffs, now we're in the 12 team? Now they want to do that with the ACC. So one will play 4, I guess, after conference rivalry week. You usually have a week between rivalry week, I think, and the conference championship games. I could be wrong. Not like I've played in one in a while. And then you would have 2 and 3 play. So what would that have been this year? Clemson would have been the 2 seed, actually. SMU would have been the 1 seed. And we haven't even decided how we're seeding these teams yet. How is that determined? Record, and then what's the tiebreakers? Because if you go to 4 teams, you're going to have a ton of ACC teams that have a claim to we should be in the 4 spot. But I guess if you just go on record, SMU would have been 1, Clemson would have been 2, Miami 3, SMU 4. But you also could probably flip that with 2 and 3. Either way, you could very well have Syracuse and Miami, right? So you'd probably, in whatever order you want to put them, you'd have Clemson, you'd have SMU, you'd have Miami, you'd probably have Syracuse. Well, Miami and Syracuse just played in rivalry week. So what are you going to do? Have them rematch to see who plays in the ACC title game? We're overlooking something here. What was the whole think? What was the whole reason for changing the way we do conference title games? They don't want to play an extra game before the playoffs. So now instead of playing one extra game being the conference championship game, you're going to play 2. Which completely, not only does it not address the problem or the grievance you had, it makes it twice as worse because you have twice as many games. You have an extra game. Basically, look, if things continue on this trajectory in college football, this hasn't been decided. This is something they're going to talk about going into whatever the next meetings that the conferences or that the ACC has. But I imagine this is a similar sentiment from other conferences. Like I'm sure Lane Kiffin. He should be called Lane Kiffin as much as a crybaby he is. Lane Kiffin, Kalen Board, Alabama, they probably like, oh, we need to have a 4-team SEC playoff. Look how deep the SEC is. It would only be fair, blah, blah, blah. Basically, we're not going to have conference championships are not going to mean anything anymore. And that's sad. That's part of what makes college football great. No one's going to care about conference champions anymore. They'll probably just somehow, they'll pick some way to pick a conference champion, but it won't mean anything to anyone anymore. And this is one of the, to me, final nails in the coffin of really nothing about college football resembles what it did when I grew up watching it. Now, some of it's better, I think, obviously. I think in general, the skill of the players is better. But all of this pageantry and nonsense and endlessly complaining, and we don't even give a system 1 year before we have to completely overhaul how conference championships are played is insane. Now, on another level, I kind of get it. Why did SMU make the ACC title game? They had a ridiculously easy schedule. Now, is kind of a dig at SMU, but they had the benefit of a ridiculously easy schedule. The toughest team they played in the regular season, they lost to. Now, some people, like if you know Bryce Cooner, I saw them on Twitter. Where's all these people that said SMU was going to be garbage like me? Keep in mind, this is the same guy that thought he was going to fix North Carolina. He did a video. North Carolina's a sleeper playoff team. So just keep that in mind. But anyways, those, as far as I can tell, are the 2 things they're throwing around. What do you think? Which one of those would you go with? Would you go with neither of them? Do you think, like me, hey, let's just ride with what we got for at least another year? Let's maybe have more than 1 year's worth of data before we all start crying about why we either got left out of the playoffs or why we got beat in the first round of the playoffs. Let me know what you guys think. Y'all have a good one. Talk to you soon.